Notebooks out, pens down, let the boredom begin. We're starting a new chapter. We're studying Unit 4, Sensation. And if you thought you were out of the woods with the boredom of neurons, brain structures, all that biology, a lot of people get mad, man. They take a psychology class like, God, didn't know I was taking anatomy. What's up with this? Well, the fun continues because you need to know all the structures of the eye, the ear, the skin, maybe not the tongue, but you've got to know the anatomy of the sense organs. And we're going to talk about why in a second. Okay, so why are we studying sensation in a psychology class? Why is this not an anatomy class, a bio class, a physiology class? Well, because number one, we're in the middle of what's called the medical or biological paradigm. We've briefly tripped through history. We've gone through our different paradigms. Where we are right now, bio. Everything's MRI. Everything's brain scans. Everything's looking at how a peptide works, or a peptide or neurotransmitter fits into a receptor site, and does that make us fall in love? Does that make us depressed? Does that make us addicted? So everything's bio, everything's chemical. So that's where we are, curriculum-wise. But for this class, why are we in sensation? Well, let's kind of back up a little bit and let's talk about you. Who are you? I know it's like a real philosophical question. Who are you? Some possible answers are you are the sum of all of your memories. So if you have amnesia, who are you? But we'll get to that in the memory unit. Another possible answer is you are the sum or the interaction of everything that was done to you and for you by your parents, by Barney TV show, by Mrs. Felderspar, the kindergarten teacher. You're a sum of all your experiences. Okay? Some people say, no. Who I am is my consciousness. It's my thoughts. And I would agree with that, especially in light of this, because I'm suggesting we don't know what thoughts are made of. We kind of do. Wilhelm Wundt want to know what the mind is made of. What if I said the mind's made of thoughts? Okay, I'll go with that. What are thoughts made of? So here's my quick answer. Thoughts are made of sensations. Thoughts are made of sensations. A lot of you are like, I don't believe you. All right, a lot of you are like all hostile. I can see the academic skepticism, or maybe it's just boredom in your eyes. Like, I don't believe you. Okay, so here's my challenge to you. I want you to think of a color that you've never seen. It's an interesting question. If I were to suggest to you your mind is like the tallest building in the world, somewhere in Dubai, I think. Think if you're going to build a mind. If you're going to build the biggest building, tallest, most technologically advanced building, you're going to need, I don't know how many cubic tons of concrete. You're going to need wires and steel girders and windows, and I don't even know what you would need. You'd need carpet. You'd need everything in a building. Okay, those things are the raw materials. So here's my analogy. Sensations, light, sound, taste, texture, and smell. Those are the raw materials with which thoughts are made. If you don't believe me, I would like you to respond back using words or sounds you've never heard. So why are we studying this? Because we can't study thoughts unless we study what thoughts are made of, and I'm suggesting thoughts are made of sound. Furthermore, let's telescope way later in the course when we start talking about abnormal psychology. One of the hallmarks of schizophrenia, which is one of the most serious diseases, is hallucinations. People hear things. They see things that aren't there. Well, we have to distinguish between what you see and what you might not see. So let me ask you this. If you're ever sitting there and you hear a ringing in your ears just start, is that a hallucination? Do you actually hear it? Is it them talking to you, trying to get in touch with you, and you just ignore it? Driving down a road and you see it's real hot summer day, you see wet pavement ahead, you drive up there, it's not wet. Did you really see it? What did you sense? Look, I think we know the legendary hearing ability of dogs. They can hear high pitches. Elephants can hear rumbles so low frequency, we cannot perceive them. So can whales. Bats got radar. Dolphins got sonar. I've got a little challenge for you. I want you to go home in the backyard on the sidewalk, and I want you to try to walk a straight line with your eyes closed. And your mom's like, what are you doing? Shut up, Mom! Try that. All right. I'm not sure you can, but the lowliest ant can. Some fish can sense electromagnetic radiation. Sharks, I'm pretty sure can. How does a duck get from point A to 1,000 miles away without getting lost? What are they sensing? Why am I bringing up what animals can sense? Because I want you to know that we cannot hear things, we cannot smell things, we cannot see things, we cannot sense things. How much of the world is out there that we don't know about? We only know about this much. And we better make sure we're taking it into ourselves correctly. That's why we got to study sensation. If you're hearing voices, are you crazy? Or is just something wrong with your ears? If you're seeing spots, are you hallucinating? Just something wrong with your eyes. That's kind of why we got to dig in from this. And there's a lot of fun things in this chapter because we really get to realize how awkward and inaccurate our idea of the world is. So let's dig into this. What are we going to write down? I think we just talked about it. Why are we in a psychology class? Because thoughts are made up of information from our senses. What if our senses give us incorrect data? Does that mean that our thoughts are wrong? And the answer could be, yeah. What if you were to be an inhuman monster and you take a baby and you raise that baby in a specialized nursery and you only let that baby see black and white images? You only let that baby see certain frequencies of light so they can never experience color or red. Will they ever be able to think in color? So what we're exposed to kind of makes us who we are. So we got to figure out, how do we interact with the world? That's what sensation is. How do we interact with the world? The fancy word for it is called psychophysics. Psychophysics is the study of environmental energy and our reaction to it. Psychophysics is the study of environmental energy and our reaction to it. And this was started before psychology was started. This kind of gave birth to psychology. The mixing of this and philosophy kind of came into psychology because some early philosophers were like, I know I'm thinking, but how do I know I'm no? Like, well, I know I'm thinking because I can see things. How do you know you see things? Aha. Now you can see the beginning of this science. This is an older science than psychology, but eventually becomes psychology. All right then. As we talk a little bit about the history of psychophysics, we see a familiar name, Wilhelm Wundt. His student Edward Titchener, who brought structuralism to the United States. Again, Wundt wanted to know introspection and can you measure mental events. But I think we can see the flaw of using introspection to measure how people see red, how people hear voices, how people can determine if something's smooth or not smooth. Because kind of at the end of the day, I hate to say it, I respect Wilhelm Wundt, but introspection is basically an opinion, a judgment. And as a result, it's going to be tough to use introspection as scientific fact. If we want to make the concept of why are we studying sensation really easy, we want to break it down, all we need to write is simply this. Sensation is gathering data. That's all it is. Sensation is gathering data. I didn't say information, because information is processed. Data is raw. And so all we're doing with sensation is gathering light energy. Gathering mechanical energy. What does that mean, mechanical energy? That means vibrating air molecules. There's no such thing as music. That's for another unit. We're going to talk about that later, how we perceive music. But first we actually have to hear the vibrating air molecules hit our eardrums, and that gets turned into electrical energy.
What does it say behind that little?
I bet you'd like to know, wouldn't you? Awareness due to the stimulation of a sense organ. So, I don't want to present only definitions to you. I'm trying to give you the idea of the why do we study this. And a lot of folks are you're reading the Promethean screen, except for the kid in the back who's not paying attention. Now you are. You're like, who was it? All right, so you're not reading the Promethean screen. That's weird. I guess I am. I disagree. The only thing you are doing is processing the signals your eyes are telling your brain. I'll say it again. You're only processing the signals your eyes are sending your brain. Here's the question. What if our eyes are sending us the wrong signals? You don't hear music. You hear the information that your ear sends to your brain. And we don't even know what hearing is. We don't even know what vision is. We'd have to define that. Is vision simply processing stuff from the eye to the brain, or does vision happen in the occipital lobe? Is vision an event? Is vision a process? That's why we got to study this stuff. Okay, so let's go on with this. Anyone here know what synesthesia is? Go ahead.
It's, I think you explained this before, where you can see sounds and hear colors, something like that.
Not too shabby.
I thought it was when you think and remember before that.
That could be. Synesthesia. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right, synesthesia, like a lot of conditions. I didn't call it a disease because a lot of people like synesthesia who have it. Synesthesia, like a lot of conditions, like autism, like depression, okay, is a spectrum. It's not you either have it or you don't, and it's certainly not a disease because it can be rather pleasant. And like a lot of things in psychology, it's not this way for everyone. What it is it's a cross-processing of incoming data. That's a fancy word, cross-processing. So the symptoms could be you can feel music. Go ahead.
So, as you were saying earlier, sensation is what we perceive, like what our eyes send to our brain.
There's a difference between sensation and perception. So let's make this. Sensation's the first step. It's getting the information in the door. No, I'm sorry, rephrase that. It's getting the data in the door. Perception is taking raw data and putting it together to make information. And both of those processes can be flawed. Does that kind of help?
So what if you're flawed and white chocolate's actually good?
Okay, A, I'm not flawed. All right, then let's get that straight. I've told you before, I thought I made a mistake once, all right, but I was wrong. All right, then, go ahead.
The synesthesia is being to happen in another sense.
That's a good way to look at it. Another sense is being perceived when it shouldn't. In neurotypicals, that's what most people are. When you see something, it's usually only processed in your occipital lobe and your primary visual cortex. But what if there is neuronal connections that also go to your temporal lobe, and then you can hear color? Go ahead.
Was this triggered by acid? Could you take acid and do that?
Certain psychotropic drugs, certain drugs will mimic this, but it doesn't create it because synesthesia is extra neurological connections, and those drugs aren't going to grow connections. Okay, but they might mimic the symptoms. Go ahead.
How common is this?
How common is it? The better question is, how would you tell people, how would you study it? Because it would be easy to give a survey, but nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, imagine how many people don't know they have synesthesia because they don't know the way they see the world isn't typical. I mean, there are people who've studied it and they've put surveys out on the web and they've done everything they do to get this, and they might study a population of a college. And they can say, well, 1 out of X people have this in this college. But is that a true representative sample? Are young college students representative of children, of adults? So,
Is it also how, is that kind of like how I don't know if my red is the same as your red?
that's exactly right. So if you don't know if your red's the same as someone else's red, and you grew up your whole life thinking that numbers have colors, does anyone here imagine them vertically? How about anyone imagine them horizontally? Does it change when you get to the teens? Is 11 through 20 have different characteristics, different color, different font? Are they organized horizontally or vertically? So what are we looking at with this? Synesthesia can occur differently for different people. There's all different types of it. I don't know that it can be debilitating, but most folks like it. And there might be a disproportionate representation of artists. Imagine how quote, unfair it would be for an artist who always writes the best music. God, why is that person so talented? Well, the reality is because when they write songs and they put down chords and they hear notes, it feels good. So they're creating music in 2 dimensions. What actually maybe they're getting a massage when they hit a harmonious chord. Maybe when they hit disharmonious chord or dissonant chord, it's like it actually causes them uncomfort or pain. Maybe an artist, when they're painting the most perfect red, it tastes sweet. Maybe that's what happens when someone who's a chef, when they taste something. So why do we study synesthesia? Because in psychology, we almost always study the abnormal, because if we study the abnormal, it gives us a window into what is normal. Lab animals who have had optic and auditory nerves switched have learned to see with other parts of your brain, which means your primary visual cortex isn't the only place that can see. Your temporal lobe can eventually process vision. And we've seen that with what's called BrainPort. That's the invention where someone who's blind can put the device on their tongue and they can see with a different part of their brain due to, of course, this thing called plasticity.
Is that a black liner in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's why.
A lot of people who have synesthesia like it. They're not disordered. It can be. We're going to look at a video of a gentleman who, when he hears words, he tastes things. And I don't know the rhyme or reason. When he hears someone's name, even if it's a friend of his name, he gets a bad taste of wet diapers. But it's not a strong taste, it's a subtle taste. And when he hears certain words, he's going to get a taste of fruit. But he hears other words, it's going to be a taste of this. A taste of this.
How does he know what a wet diaper is?
That's a fantastic question. That's a fantastic. No judgment here. Actually, there is judgment, but what do? We do it behind someone's back. All right, that's the important thing. Go ahead.
Is it kind of like when you plug your nose, you can't taste something?
Yes, it's kind of like when you plug your nose, you can't taste something. We're going to learn, we study taste and smell, that much of what we, quote, taste is actually smell, because we're really limited in what we can taste. You need to know this term. Synesthesia is thought to be due to what's called a lack of pruning. Anyone here a horticulturalist? Anyone here have to do weekend chores and every now and then have to go trim down the shrubbery or the bushes or anything like that, okay? When you prune a bush or a shrub, you're cutting away different branches because the branches are too crowded or it's too big or the tree's growing ugly or whatever else. Why do we care about neurological pruning? Because we know that babies are born with a lot of neurons and what seems to be a lot of unnecessary synaptic connections. And so babies, very, very, very young babies, oftentimes their brain says, we don't need this neuron, we don't need this neuron, we don't need this connection, let's get rid of this. What if for some reason or other certain things were not clipped or pruned? And so some weird connections were still left, a connection between your occipital lobe and your temporal lobe. So when you hear things, you see things, when you see things, you hear things. So we're thinking synesthesia might be a lack of synaptic pruning.
He doesn't just hear words, he also tastes them.
I see a customer, if I know his name, I instantly get the taste of his name. There's somebody that comes in here that tastes of wet nappies. But it isn't that strong. I mean, it's not nice, and it doesn't sound very nice, but it's not that strong a flavour, therefore it doesn't affect me as much as, say, Derek would. I mean, I don't find Derek offensive because it's earwax, but because it's very, very strong.
I think he was good.
James has no control over which taste is linked with which word.
The problems I have are, I mean, somebody will come in, they then order, say, a pint of that. I get the bacon rind taste. They then order a packet of roasted nuts. I don't get roasted nuts, I get some sort of peculiar burnt meat taste. They then pay with a £5, from which I get a taste of strawberry jam sandwiches. Very, very specific. I then have to give them the change. Change invariably tastes of processed cheese, cheesy taste.
In everyday conversation, he is bombarded with flavours. His synesthesia can even set off a battle between real flavours and the ones that are triggered by words.
Somebody says something to me, they're talking to me. I can be doing this, but whatever they've said, I'll get the flavour. The flavour will come in, and I'm sitting here listening to or tasting flavours while looking at this, smelling, and it's the conflict. So somebody's saying, do you like this? And then I get a strong taste of yoghurt. I find it very difficult to sit there preparing sausages and bacon and eggs when I'm getting yoghurt and chocolate taste and everything over the top of it. It makes me feel horrible.
Question?
Yeah, so, like, what if he hadn't tasted, like, let's say he got used to only eating, like, bread and water, per se.
Okay. So the gentleman who had synesthesia, who mixes his words up with his taste. What if he's never tasted something? How would he know what it tastes like? Like when he said that thing tastes like wet diapers or earwax. All right, I don't know what goes on in his personal life, and that's fine. This brings up an interesting question with sensation and knowledge and thought. How do we know what we know? Is our brain hardwired to sense certain things? We have a red part of our eye. Do we have a red part of our brain? Which means that before we've even seen red, our brain knows what red is. I don't think we have a wet diaper part of our brain, because that's just weird. But before a baby hears a high-pitched noise, a baby can hear a high-pitched noise. They don't have to learn to hear it, and I don't think we have to learn to see red. So are certain tastes preloaded in our brain? I think sweet is, I think salty is, I think sour is, but I don't think chocolate probably is. For those of us who are good, we talked a little bit about synesthesia and autism. So let's jump into it. I know the two really have nothing to do with each other, but why do they both appear in a sensation unit? Because a lot of times when we hear about autism, most of the time we focus on a certain emotional or social difficulty. Kids or adults don't connect emotionally or socially with other folks. So like, why is this in a sensation unit? One of the other symptoms that is not focused on is what's called hypersensitivity to some kind of stimulus. And some people might think that the lack of social cues, the lack of social ability, is really just the person with autism trying to deal with the fact the world is really loud. And you know what? Things that you don't think are like your clothes. What's the big deal about putting on clothes? They hurt. The fabric is irritating. Too many nerve cells in your skin, it's your brain's processing it differently. And one of the reasons you may or may not meet eye contact is because maybe you feel like someone's all the way up in your grill. And one of the things that people don't, that is kind of lagging behind in autistic data or autistic studies is hypersensitivity. Imagine if the whole world was always loud. Would you want to go out in public? If the whole world was always bright, would you want to always look around, or would you maybe withdraw into your world? Something to think about. Let's talk about this word called transduction. Sensory transduction. You need to know this. If there's one word in this unit, you got to know it's called transduction. I will give you a sticker tomorrow if you come in with a tattoo of the word transduction. All right. Transduction means external energy is being converted to electrical energy in neurons. Well, think of the word trans. Trans means across. So anyone give me a word that starts with trans? Transgender. Well, it means across from one gender to another. And transport. Trans means, of course, across. Port means door, from one door to another. That's what transportation means. So now that I'm waiting for anyone else to say trans words. Okay, we got that. So what are we talking about? Trans means across. Well, think of the word duct. Think of a heating duct. It allows for energy to get from the heater to your room or the air conditioning in the room. Think of a tear duct. All right, this is how weakness is shown to the world. I shouldn't say that. I'm sure strong people cry too. Let's look at spatial coding. I see a lot of words there. Let's try to make it really easy. Before you write, or as you write, maybe you can listen, but I'm not sure that's possible because you can only do one thing at a time. I want you to think of what's called the sensory cortex, that sensory strip on both hemispheres of your brain that corresponds to your body. And I think it makes sense. A certain part of your body will send a certain signal to a part of your brain. So that's pretty much it. Spatial coding means this. A space in your body will send a certain signal to your brain. That's all you got to write for right now. If we know spatial coding deals with space, let's look at something that deals with time. It's going to be called temporal coding. Write down the word first, and then I urge you, I demand that you slam your pens down on your desks before you write the definition. So write down, come on. That's what I'm talking about. Get your teenage frustration out. So let me tell you what temporal coding's not. It doesn't have to do with the speed of firing. I'm going to say it again. It doesn't have to do with the speed of firing because that would mean the all or none law isn't true. When we learn the all or none law in neurons means a neuron either fires or it doesn't. It fires as fast as it can or it doesn't. Temporal coding doesn't deal with speed. It deals with rate of firing. So does a neuron fire 1 time a second, 5 times a second, or 10 times a second? Temporal coding means the rate of firing will send a type of signal to the brain. The rate of firing will send a type of signal to the brain. And of course, when we're talking about the signals, we know they're all afferent because it's going to arrive at the brain. Remember, same. Sensory afferent, motor efferent. All right, let me paint a hypothetical before we get on to sensory adaptation. Sensory adaptation. I want you to imagine that you've been in class and for whatever reason you drank like a giant cup of coffee. All right, so you drank a giant cup of coffee, you said, ooh, that's all right because you like white chocolate. But if you drank a giant cup of coffee and you sat in a long class and you got distracted and all of a sudden, oh crap, you got to go pee. But you don't want to go pee anywhere in the school's bathrooms because it's like stinky and there's monsters in there and it's bad, man. You don't want that. So what do? You run home, you bike home, you get in your car and you fly home. And you burst open the door, throw your backpack down, all right, and you're like heading to the bathroom like a freaking running back. And you're like, get out of the way, all right? And right as you're about to open it, the door opens and out walks Grandpa Fred. And dude's got the newspaper under the arm and like, get out of the way. But you have to be respectful. You go in and you slam the door. And then it hits you. Oh, Grandpa Fred was in here. And then bam, like a punch in the face, the stink hits you like I don't know what. And you're like, oh. All right. And you're like dying, but you're also trying to get your pants down. It's all awkward. You got one hand here on your pants. Now, as you have your hand on your nose, and you're breathing out of your mouth because you don't want to smell the stink, remember, atomized poop molecules are floating through the air and landing on your tongue. So you should breathe through your nose, but if you do, it stinks, right? Notice that. That's why you don't go to the bathroom, you just hold it?
I don't want it to be so.
You need to hold your breath.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Or goes in like a school bag. So here's the deal. Imagine that it doesn't stink for more than about 20 seconds. Now that's really weird. Did all of the atomized floating poop molecules just gravitationally fall to all the bathroom surfaces? Or are they still wisping around the air on microcurrents and we just don't sense them? So yeah, we get used to it, but I want you to know, if we get used to it, and we all do, that simply means we are not sensing the environment accurately. The sensation's still there. The energy's still there. We've just shut it off. If we do that in that situation, what other situations do we do? Is there anyone here who feels your socks? Oh, you do now, because how many of y'all are wiggling your toes? Yeah, you're like, ooh, you're kind of happy. Maybe, just maybe, you've gone to the emergency room. And by the time you're actually seen with your sprained ankle, it's been hours since you heard it, you've had ice on it, you've had it elevated, it doesn't hurt anymore. You become adapted to that level of pain. Now, it will start hurting again once the badly trained doctor like grabs her, does this hurt, does this hurt, does this hurt? Yep, it's sprained, right, thanks. Why? Because he has reset the sensation. So if you don't do anything, you will get used to it. You don't believe me? I double dog dare you to realize I want you to feel your feet on the floor. But you don't. You feel your feet in your shoes. But you don't. You feel your feet in your socks. We don't think about that. Please know that what is out there doesn't accurately make it to what is in your mind. So, sensory adaptation, just right when you get used to a certain stimulus. When you become accustomed to a certain stimulus. Absolute threshold is the bare minimum you can notice 50% of the time. What up?
I was going to say about that sensory adaptation, you were talking about physical pain. Could that also apply to emotional pain?
Every day I feel it. Every day I feel it. Oh, don't worry. One day you'll be here. Y'all are bright and shiny. You're thinking of your future and all your dreams. They're not going to come true. Look at all the people you encounter driving around or working. Are they going to their dream job? Is a minivan really what they wanted? No, but soon, very soon, you will join their ranks. Absolute threshold. It's the minimum amount you can notice. But let's take a look at this because it has to be the minimum amount you can notice 50% of the time. I see a lot of people copying, you're hurting my feelings, you're not even listening. So let's go back into second grade, Mrs. Felderspar's class. And a lot of times kids have to get hearing tests. Now little kids are not known for their sophistication, all right? What they'll do is they will do their best to agree with an adult in any way, shape, or form. That's elementary school children, all right? Until they get to like middle school and adolescent kicks on, they become like raging hormonal brats who should be kept in their own warehouse. Tell me I'm wrong. So we got the idea here with little kids going for a hearing test. And if you press a sound, the little kid like, I hear it, and they're all happy. You press another, I hear it. They're not even hearing. They just want to say, I hear it. Maybe they'll take pride in how much they can hear. So maybe the researcher's tricky. And the researcher will press a button but not really press it. The kid's like, I hear it. Well, the kid's lying. They didn't hear it. Or could it be at the exact same time you pressed the button, their ears started ringing? And they did hear something. Or did they? We have to define hearing. Does hearing happen in your head or does hearing happen in your ears? What if I said sensation happens in your ear, but perception happens in your brain? So when you're doing a hearing test, when you're doing a vision test, you don't just do one and out. Oh, child hears it. Oh, you can see it. The reality is you do a series of tests. If someone can sense something 50% of the time or more, they sense it. So if you hear a noise 1 out of 10 times, you didn't hear it. Not reliably, not scientifically. If you hear it 3 out of 10 times, you didn't hear it. You hear it 6 out of 10 times, you heard it reliably. All right then, so that went well. My question to you is, if you don't like your score, how did you study? But more importantly, once that's done, how are you going to study next time? What are you going to do differently?